you've actually worked with some of the biggest US artists in the world.
Yeah, I've been really lucky.
Pink,
Yeah.
Alicia Keys, Justin Timberlake, Beyonce.
Prince. And everyone was like, well, can't we just say Prince? No. And we had to have the sign done. It had to be in a specific gold, but a specific palette, specific size. And we did TFI Friday, Top of the Pops. I really liked working with Simon. We didn't tend to see him much in the office, but he was hands-on. He had the final say on everything.
But One Direction, you were at the very heart of that
there
One
from the
Direction
beginning.
project. Fandom was outrageous.
Oh, scarily so.
But Harry was amazing.
Oh, Harry.
I mean, just the nicest person in the world.
And
such a young, nice
why
boy.
He is where he is today. There was just something about him. He was so charismatic. He was so charming. Apparently there's this actor coming in with him.
Right.
And I was like, well, who is it now? And he went, Johnny. I was like, Johnny Depp? Yep, that's the one. I was like, oh my God.
Wow. Okay, Jacqui, welcome to the Blinding Talent Music Industry podcast. I am absolutely thrilled to have you on here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You started out the Spandau Ballet fan club.
I did.
Now, tell me a bit about that entry point into the music industry.
Do you know what? It's really weird because it's really, when people ask you how you get a job in music industry, sometimes it's really hard to answer that question because I went to school like everyone else. I left with just basic, grades, nothing exciting. Never realised what I wanted to do or thought what I wanted to do. Just thought, I'm going to leave school when I was 15, carry on doing the sport I did, and then I'll get a job in a shop or something. And it just so happened I started getting into the scene at the time, which became the new romantic scene. So I started going to clubs in London, Blitz being one of them. And then just by chance, one weekend, we went to Bournemouth and I met a few girls. And one of the girls just so happened to be the cousin of Steve Dagger, who ran Spandau Ballet, or managed, should I say, Spandau Ballet at the time. And they were just starting out, so they weren't quite where they became. So we became really good friends. And then I got to know Steve really well. And just one day he just casually said, we're getting loads of fan mail for Spandau. I don't know what to do with it. And I said, well, I'll do it. I'll open it.
So actually, what did you do with it? Did you reply to all of the letters?
I was a really good fan club person. In fact, even now, when I've been to like Spandau Ballet gigs or have been to shows that the individual band members have done, people come up to me and go, oh my God, you were Jacqui from the fan club.
What?
We used to write to you all the time. So it's quite funny. But yeah, so I mean, they were getting sackful of letters. So I just said to him, I'll do it. I was working for British Telecom at the time. I was just 18, coming on 19. And
you took your role in communications very seriously.
Yeah. and you know what? It started off really basic, and then it ended up being a real kind of serious, full-on job for 6 years. And I absolutely loved it. I had one of the first ever little computers. I actually took the band to a studio, did flexi-disc, recorded flexi-discs for Christmas, got photos made up, did the old signatures.
It's weird, isn't it? When I
stamp.
think about fandom in the 80s and we talk about messaging the fans, and in 2025, we talk to our bands about messaging the fans. That hasn't really changed, has it? You still have these street scenes, you still have these fan clubs, and the medium is still, you need to engage with your fans. Yeah, it's
just very different. I mean, for me, before social media, I think the thing about fan clubs or fans, there wasn't a lot of outlets. So to be a member of a fan club or to miraculously find out where a band's going to be, and to be able to go in the hope that you're going to see your favourite band member was a really big deal. Whereas now I think it's so accessible.
Well, you couldn't just post on an Instagram story and say, hey, we're going to be here at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have to seed some of that out to the fans?
All the time.
Right.
All the time.
Send them a letter saying, or an email.
I did newsletters every 3 months. Right. So quarterly, I did newsletters, just saying what the band were up to. When they were touring, we held back front rows for fan club members.
Wow.
So I dealt with the ticket situation.
Wow.
So yeah, it was really good fun. And the band, I mean, I loved the band. They were just, I mean, around that time in the early 80s, you know, music was just about fun. I mean, I know for the bands that made it, it was very serious, but that whole kind of movement was just about dressing up, going out, having a good time.
Yeah.
You know, and then the music was kind of secondary in a way to that.
Well, it was great fun, the 80s. And I think when anyone looks back on the 80s and, you know, some of the young people now are only just discovering the 80s, which I think is really, really interesting. I guess we'll get on to what new music is at some point. But you're right. When I think back on Adam and the Ants and
Depeche
Mode, it was all about
they really
outfits.
evolved, didn't they, from the 80s into kind of...
People say that, you know, the industry, you know, it's changed massively in 40 years.
Not really.
But actually, as an artist and a creative, it hasn't massively, has it? You still got to look unique.
I think technology has.
Yeah.
But actually, you know, we like, I always class myself as old school, and I never feel embarrassed about saying to somebody, whether it be a manager or a band even, I'm always like, well, I'm quite old school. This is what I believe in. Do you know what I mean? Because the thing is, at the end of the day, it just goes back to the same thing, doesn't it? You know, engagement, good records, sometimes not good records. But, you know, if a band is engaging, I think that makes a lot of difference.
So let's talk a bit more about your journey, because you've gone from this incredible... And I imagine you get a lot of natural insight almost via osmosis on learning about fandom. Even at that stage, it becomes quite intuitive. What happened next? So when did you realise you were in the music industry? When did that happen?
Yeah, I probably didn't realise I was in the music industry until I did get my job with Ferret Spanner. And Ferret Spanner used to promote Spandau across radio and TV. So I didn't see them that often, but sometimes I would go along to TV shows with the band and I would meet them. And I kind of looked at what they did and I kind of thought, I do love music, but actually I quite like the kind of creative, and it felt really exciting for me. I don't know why a TV studio did that, but it did. Whenever I went to Top of the Pops, I was like, oh my God, this is really exciting. And it's like seeing the finished product almost, if you know what I mean. So I kind of really, and I decided, I'd like to do that. So I spoke to both Neil and Nigel, who owned Ferret Spanner, and I just kept saying, look, I really want a job, I really want to do what you do. And they were like, well, you work for a client, you know, we can't poach you from a client. And I was like, well, why can't you? Because I was quite naive around that age. I wasn't an old 19, 20-year-old going on. I was quite naive. So anyway, to cut a long story short, excuse the pun, I left. They told me to leave. I left. I got a job for Magnet Records. I don't know if you ever heard of Magnet Records.
Heard of, don't know much about them.
I got a job there just because I needed to get a job before they offered me a job, if that made sense.
Right.
So I worked for Magnet Records for about 3 months, which was hideous because I was doing press and I had no idea of press. There was no one there to kind of show me the way.
Right. Wow.
So I was dealing and talking to journalists and I had no idea what I was doing. And the clients were kind of rolling rats. So it was not great. So luckily I was only there for 3 months.
Right.
And then, Ferret Spanner offered me a job as just an assistant, and I made sure that in that assistant role I always got to the phones when they rang before anyone else, started chatting to people, producers, managers, in some cases artists, and I think worked hard, and eventually they said that I could work a band of my own, which I got very excited about.
And that band was?
And that band was East 17.
Come on. How was that experience? Because you're now talking about the mid-90s, aren't you? And towards the back end of the 90s. And,
yeah.
But that's quite an interesting group. So talk to me a bit more about that East 17 experience, because, I mean, people who know East 17 know East 17.
Yeah.
People who don't, probably like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, for me, because it was the first artist or first band that I ever really was responsible for. And because I was doing at the time radio and TV, and then radio was kind of, and to some extent radio is still more important, but then radio was very important because the TV side of things, there wasn't a lot of outlet. So to do both was incredibly exciting for me, and because it was the first band I was given, I was determined to make it a success.
So let's stay in the 90s for a bit, because the late 90s become really interesting because you have this huge pop explosion, which you can only describe as a pop explosion.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you had the Americans coming across, you had your Britneys, your NSYNCs, your Aguileras, your Beyoncés, or Destiny's Child leading into Beyoncés. And you've worked with a few of them, right?
I have.
So before we get onto the US, let's start back in the UK, because one thing that the queen of pop and the queen of boy bands will be remembered for is the work with Westlife, of course.
Yeah.
Which people don't often remember them in quite the same way. They were a hugely successful boy band that created almost a formula around what a boy band is going to be sort of almost stereotyped as, you know, and that's an incredibly powerful thing. Tell me a bit about the Westlife journey, and in particular, you know, how that started, how you got involved, what were some of those initial challenges?
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, I came in to the second album. I was working we were BMG then, so it was Arista and RCA. And I'd gone over to BMG with Nigel Sweeney at the time, who was one of my bosses at Ferret Spanner. From the start of that, then you had things like Smash Hits, Smash Hits poll winners, and those, because I remember doing those with not just bands like we've talked about, E17 and stuff, but with everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone. I even did it with Janet Jackson because they were such a big deal to do. And just Westlife did those. They did the tour. Radio 1 used to do summer road shows. You wouldn't necessarily get on the radio, but you would put your band forward to do a week on the road doing Radio 1 tours. So you're in front of a massive audience. And that's how it kind of developed from a success point of view. That's how they built up their fan base. Because then you didn't have social media, so there was no...
You had to go and do legwork.
You know, you did. School tours. School tours are integral.
I mean, school tours are still a thing.
They are still a thing.
Unbelievably.
They've kind of come full cycle because they stopped for a while and then people have started doing them again. But yeah, school tours were so important. As I said, the Smash Hits
and for anyone listening who maybe doesn't know what school tours are, that's when you will put boy bands or pop bands into primary schools and some secondary schools and just play to the kids there in the assembly hall. So not a very professional setup often. It's just a PA, couple of mics,
awful setup,
dance around and hopefully capture some fans. And it was such a huge thing then, and is again, it feels like a big thing now too.
Yeah, but I think what was important that obviously not only did you get in front of the right age group that you're trying to appeal to at the time, because there was no social media, there was no other way for those fans, kids, whatever, to kind of have the opportunity to get to know those bands. So they became so integral. Yeah, so it was just a really exciting time.
But what was so special about, so when we talk about Westlife here, you know, and you've experienced them from the second album onwards, but what's so special about those guys? I mean, obviously, the one thing we also remember about them is the key change. We all stand up from our stalls
and they were always
change.
Dressed the same. It was like a formulated thing, wasn't it? Because there was always stalls, there was always a stand up on the key change, which, interesting enough, when you was at TV shows and if the band were running late or they couldn't make a rehearsal, you'll be surprised how many crew members couldn't wait to get on that stage to sit on that stool in a rehearsal for cameras and then stand up on the key change. So it became...
Did you ever go?
Yeah, I've done it a few times. Listen, I've been Victoria Beckham as well.
Oh, excellent. But we should talk about Victoria Beckham as well.
But yes, it was... I think it was that. And also they always wore, like in those early days, they all wore the same kind of colours. So it was kind of a bit uniformed.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, they were good looking. They were Irish.
Yeah.
Irish charm. And you know what? They worked their arses off. Although bands like Westlife wasn't necessarily successful in places like America, in Asia, Singapore, all those kind of, they were huge. You know, so they're traveling the globe constantly. If it's not promo, it's touring.
Yeah.
So they are being driven by managers, tour managers, security, pluggers, everyone.
Do you know what I love about what you just said? And it's such an important distinction sometimes, and we all hear it. Oh, you got to break America. You got to break America. Do you know what? We can do 30 million albums without America. But let's talk a little bit. So actually, even though I would sort of made a point there about the US market, you've actually worked with some of the biggest US artists in the world.
Yeah, I've been really lucky.
I mean,
I've
not
been
small
really
artists.
lucky.
Pink, Alicia Keys, Justin Timberlake, Beyonce. Prince.
Oh, I mean, God bless him. It's like all the greats are gone, aren't they? There are still some greats. But he was, I didn't do a lot with him. It was around the time that he was the symbol.
Right.
And he was coming in, and I think we did.
Very frustrating from a TV point of view, that.
Yeah.
Can't get the symbols to go on screen.
Yeah. And everyone was like, well, can't we just say Prince? No, you have to say the symbol.
Yeah.
And we had to have the sign done. It had to be in a specific palette.
Right.
Gold, but a specific palette, specific size. And we did TFI Friday, we did Top of the Pops, and we did I think it was the 40th anniversary for the Tube, which back in the day was
massive.
Was like the kind of music
cool
show.
And
because it was like one of a kind at that point.
Yeah.
So we were doing those three, and we had to have pink limos. And me and my colleague Annette, who you know very well, we spent like our whole life making sure that the colour palettes were right, the cars were right. She had to get a love seat, you know, and
of course.
And he was absolutely amazing. And I remember when we finished on TFI on the Friday night, and I went straight up to Newcastle because that's where the Tube was filmed. He was coming on the Saturday morning, and I was going on my own, and I had no management. And I was saying to my boss at the time, oh my God, I don't think I can do it on my own. It's too like, and you'll be fine. And I kind of remember meeting him at the airport, and he came out with his cane, and I'm like, ooh, it's Jacqui, I'm here. It's like, and it was just the most bizarre thing ever.
So we just come out the back of the 90s, and we're in the early noughties. We've gone through all this kind of boy band era. We talked about all the amazing artists even working with in that era. But tell me a little bit about this reality kind of decade that we then had. We had the birth of X Factor and Pop Rivals, and you were involved in that a bit, right?
Yeah, Pop Idol. There was Pop Stars The Rivals, wasn't there?
There was.
And then Pop Idol. So I was, lucky enough to work Will Young, who I love and still love to this day. And
still doing it.
Yeah, still doing it.
Singing.
Still very successful, still sells tickets for shows. So yeah, doing really well. Same with Gareth Gates, really. He came second.
Yeah.
And he's still, musical theatre. And
those reality TV shows, often we look back on them as slightly, I don't want to say embarrassing, but I guess we look at it as a bit cheesy. But then we forget Girls Aloud came out of that. One of the biggest girl groups of the 21st century.
Yeah,
Little
absolutely.
Mix, who you've worked with,
Little Mix
came out
absolutely,
of that. Again,
and still going strong.
Fantastic.
Took a hiatus, and individually still working well. Do you know what I think? See, I think there is a lot of snobbery towards those kind of shows. I think from a public point of view, if it's entertaining, it's entertaining.
Yeah.
And you can't deny the success of all those shows. And I think it gave, yes, some artists were questionable, but I think if you're making a TV show, you've got to put the bad with the good, right?
Yeah. It's a TV
otherwise,
show.
It is a
I find
TV
it
show.
As someone who, like, you're a TV thoroughbred like myself, right? People sometimes go, but why would you have terrible acts on the show? Why would you have that person who looks stupid and can't sing? Because it's a TV show.
Yeah, and because we're in it, if you had £1 for every person that asked you that question, we'd all be living on a desert island somewhere, wouldn't we, in the sunshine?
It's just because they don't understand TV.
But it has to be entertaining.
Yeah.
But I also think it gave great platforms for some of those, whether they made it through or sadly didn't make it through. It gave them, I think, a platform to kind of try something and get out there.
Yeah.
And, and some were absolutely amazing, some not so amazing. But I think some of the greatest pop stars are not the best singers.
Yeah.
But they have so much else that, they sing well enough.
Yeah.
But it's not the be all and end all, and sometimes you think, and it swings the other way, because sometimes you can see backing singers that are opening up for George Michael or something, and they've got the most amazing voices, but they're backing singers for a reason, sadly. Yeah. I always think with those kind of reality shows, if the artist is still successful in some capacity, it was the best thing.
Yeah.
If they're no longer successful, or they came out and they had an element of success and now sadly that's gone and they're back to doing what they were doing before they entered, then I think they're the ones that kind of have a gripe about it.
Yeah. You can't, and I think this is somewhat how X Factor really changed the pop industry in the noughties in particular, because it, as you mentioned, instant fame, and it felt a bit like that. Even though Top of the Pops would give you, it wasn't. We were discovering new artists on the telly. That was the first time,
absolutely,
where we were getting 10 completely new artists that we didn't know and building a relationship with them over time, and so we would follow their journey to the final.
Yeah, their little VTs that they did every week.
With the parents or whatever.
Yeah, the different songs. You met the families, you met the sisters, the brothers, the dogs, the pets. It was like, I just think it really, like Strictly still does now to a degree, although it's a slightly different proposition, obviously. But I just think it captured an imagination. But if you think about it, though, talent shows weren't new then. X Factor and Pop Stars Arrivals, back in the day, even before my time, there was talent shows.
Yeah, of course.
That were much more hard-hitting than X Factor. Like some of the judges on there, how rude they were to the people that were coming on. Yeah. You'd never get away with that now.
Well, let's talk a bit about the judges, because obviously I know that you also worked with Louis and you've worked with Simon Cowell, of course, as you've done an awful lot of work for Syco. Let's talk a little about Simon Cowell. So what was it like working with Simon?
Do you know what? I really liked working with Simon. He wasn't like, when he got incredibly busy, and especially when American Idol happened, and obviously he was in the US a lot. We didn't tend to see him much in the office, but he was hands on everything. I mean, he did have people that worked with him that were amazing, and a lot of people used to think, oh, Simon's not around but do you know what? He had the final say on everything. If he didn't like a video, it would be scrapped and you'd be doing a new one. If he felt that one of the band members weren't pulling their weight or something else was going on, he was there. So even though he wasn't always, you didn't physically see him all the time, you kind of felt the presence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I always remember going into the Sony offices and the big staircase that led up to the Syco office, and of course you had Sonny there and people like that.
And he was very rarely there. When we were in that Sony building, he was very rarely there. In the old BMG building at the start of Westlife and Five and stuff like that, and obviously Robson and Drone and Sunita and all of those, he was very much in the office. He was very much the A&R man.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't that was what he was always known for, really, wasn't it? Hugh Goldsmith, obviously.
Yeah,
and,
I love Hugh.
I saw him the other week, actually, and he is an A&R man as well, right? So you can imagine him and Simon having a real
and they become record company owners, don't they?
Absolutely,
label owners.
Yeah, because they understand what a pop hit is, and they make pop records. And I think everyone 100%. I have spoken to since about Simon, they would say, regardless of what you see on TV or whatever you think, he was passionate about music and passionate about songs. Absolutely through and through.
Yeah, first love, I think, for him before the TV side 100%. Of things.
So look, we're going to get on now. We've got a few more things to get through. So I'm going to just go for a little quick of a hot take. I want to get Jacqui's hot take. The queen of boy bands, the queen of pop, is going to give me some hot takes. So I'm going to ask you this question about Little Mix, who I know you worked with for a while.
I love Little Mix.
Long while. Did Little Mix outgrow the girl band label but never get the credit for it?
I think so, yes. when they came out of X Factor, I mean, if you look at them when they were in X Factor, and I know, listen, as people, we all evolve and we all change, but they've come such a long way. And I think the songs constantly, in my opinion, have been really, really strong.
Yeah.
And I think they just got to that arena band, you know, and I just think they got to that stage where you kind of think they've kind of gone above that now. They're now kind of a band in their own right.
Yeah.
You know, you can never let those tags go. Like Kelly Clarkson would never lose the American Idol tag, even though now she's successful in America with her own talk show and stuff. It still comes back to where you started, right?
Of course.
And a lot of bands don't want to talk about X Factor, or they don't want to talk about American Idol or Pop Stars Arrivals or whatever. But actually, it's part of your history. And without that, you would never be where you are. So I think they did kind of evolve. And I did think they became like a band in their own right. And they did deserve to lose the girl band tag. I think the same about Girls Aloud, to be honest.
Yeah, totally. I was just thinking about Girls Aloud. When you were saying that, I was thinking they also rose above that girl band tag to become a pop
they become
group,
so
an iconic
popular.
pop group.
Yeah.
Another little quick hot take. So do you think reality TV, did it save or ruin UK pop bands broadly?
I don't think it ruined. I'm not sure if it saved. But if you think JLS came out of there, incredibly successful still, touring again.
Yeah.
One Direction, they're all off having, you know.
Oh, we are going to be talking about One Direction. Don't you worry about
individual
that.
careers. So, no, I don't think it saved and I don't think it ruined either. I think it was just nice to
it
kind of...
It definitely changed pop music, I think.
Yeah, I think it, to a degree, I think. But I think it was just nice to see that kind of craziness again.
So we're now going to get on to what was probably one of the most important boy bands of all time. And I don't think we say that in any way of understating their power here. I mean, we might talk about the Beatles. We might talk about some of these fantastic acts from the past. But One Direction, that kind of... you were at the very heart of that One Direction project. So, wow. Tell me about... how that, so obviously X Factor happens, then what happens next?
Do you know what? Sometimes you can't even put it into words, if that makes sense. You know, I think it was pretty clear when they were on X Factor how successful they were going to become. And we always used to say, you know, sometimes you don't want to win X Factor because you do better if you don't win it.
Yeah.
You know, people that have won it have gone on to do amazing things.
Yeah.
And still do amazing things. But I think as each week went, you could just feel the excitement building and building. And I think they were also finding, because they were all pretty young. I mean, you know, I know Liam, bless Liam. Liam had obviously been the year previously and didn't get through. And then none of them got through, as we know, as individuals. Yeah. And then obviously, you know, whoever wants to win the argument, who put them together, because Simon will say it him, Nicole will say it was her, you know, everyone says different, don't they? But when I think they were put together as a band, I think initially, like I remember thinking, I'm not sure, you know, but then as it started, and then they started to find their feet and started to find their voices. Yeah. You know, I just think it just started to build and build. And every time, I didn't go to the studio every week, but sometimes when I was at the studio, normally with a artist that won the year previously. Right, yeah. Or I'd be luckily to get the script on or something as a guest performer. You know, you could feel the excitement in that audience. And it weren't just kids. Yeah, yeah. I can tell you. And it was everyone. Yeah. You know, mums, dads, it was everyone. You could kind of feel that excitement. And then I think Simon found an amazing record. What Makes You Beautiful was a great, I think, like Wings for Little Mix. Absolutely fantastic. Was a great pop record to kind of open with. They got the styling right. They shot a great video. And again, I just think it captured the imagination. And obviously, Rob Stringer and everyone in America was really buying into it. So that kind of, the American side of things helped a lot. And you could argue that they became bigger in America. Sorry, tapping the mic. They became bigger in America than they were here at the back end of it. and around the globe.
The fandom was outrageous.
Oh, scarily so.
It was I hadn't seen anything like that really in my life, actually. I suppose take that to a degree.
I think the box is one of the first things I did with them, actually.
I think it was the go-karting.
The go-karting thing. I think that was the first... because again, you've got to remember these they're not stage school kids.
No.
So they've not got that upbringing. No. So they don't know how to talk
Harry
to
was
people.
Amazing.
Oh, Harry.
Just the nicest person in the world. Such a young, nice boy.
Why he is where he is today.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the others aren't, by the way.
They're all great.
Yeah,
but he had a star quality for sure.
But there was something about Harry that, he was one of the favourites, but there was others that equally were just as popular as Harry from a fan point of view.
Yeah.
But there was just something about him. He was so charismatic. He was so charming.
Yeah.
And he was only young.
Yeah.
At the start of that.
Yeah.
But so that's why we did things like the box, because I know you guys, as with others, were itching to kind of get them, because sometimes you could come out of X Factor and Simon and Sonny would go, right, less is more.
Yep,
we're not doing da 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 da. But obviously I think with them, and because of the nature of the band, we did a lot of stuff, and we did the go-karting thing. We did a couple of daytime junkets. And then I did Alan Carr with them when Alan Carr had his Chatty Man.
Yeah.
And then the amount of kids that were outside the old ITV studios. And then we I think the producers of the show were like, oh my God, we wasn't expecting this many kids.
Yeah.
And to a degree, I don't think we were either at that point. And then it kind of just went. I can't even put a time on it. It just went.
So there wasn't a huge amount of social media at that point.
No.
Right? We're talking about 2010, right?
Yeah.
Around that sort of time. So you had a bit of YouTube, early Facebook, sort of early Instagram.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. Spotify wasn't even a thing, really, at that point. It wasn't until 2012, 2013 that Spotify become a thing. So it's crazy to think that even pre-social as it is today, you had that kind of global pandemonium around the
South
boy band.
America. Some of the footage that we used to get back, because obviously for me, my promo time was always Christmas, November, December, because that's when most of the time Syco drop their albums, because biggest time of year. Yeah. Buy-in, and especially with a band like One Direction, it's Christmas presents, isn't it, and stuff.
Yeah.
So I always got to have them in November.
Yeah.
And just seeing what they would, and again, going back to Westlife, One Direction worked their arses off. They were doing radio tours, regional tours, going around the country, going into local radio stations, not necessarily your big Bowers and stuff of the time. They were doing everything. And then they were doing that all around the world. So they're a band that never had any time. And it was a whole cycle. They were recording when they were on tour.
Yeah. I remember hearing that story, yeah.
And it was and sometimes you they are human beings at the end of the day, right? And sometimes for me, and I'm sure other people will say the same, whether you do radio, TV, press, whatever, social media, when you get a band, you want them to be lovely, you want them to be upbeat, you want them to be chatty. But sometimes, and 9 times out of 10, they are that. But, for me, sometimes I used to think, oh my God, I can't get cross because they are shattered.
Yeah.
They've
and do you
worked
think
so
there was
hard.
did you look back on that time and could you see those cracks forming? I imagine there's an initial couple of years where it's still really exciting and this is amazing, but then it's relentless and then it starts to impact. And I don't know if you said I get to see them every November. Yeah. I guess every November gives you quite a nice judgment of how things are developing. Yeah,
because they've been away for a year. Yeah. We haven't seen them for a year unless they've been touring or something.
Yeah.
So you see, and also you see that growing up period as well, that transitional period.
It's like when the kid comes back after the summer holidays and they've grown a couple of inches.
And the thing is, they've been doing the same amount of TV interviews, the same amount of radio interviews, etc. in every country around the world, practically.
Yeah.
But so there has to be some fatigue there, and they do, I think it's like any band. When a band, and I'm sure you see this in your position, even now as well.
Yeah.
When a band first starts, generally as a rule, whatever the nature of their music or culture is, there's that excitement. They want to do promo. They want to talk about themselves. They want to talk about their music. But as they do that and they get more and more successful and those years go on, it becomes a bit of a chore in the nicest possible way. So sometimes I think...
But it's even more aggressive now because you're talking about these going across the world and speaking on different TV channels, different stations. Artists are now having to post
do
videos
content every day.
Single day. And the expectation is not one video, it's 10 videos.
Yeah.
And if we talk about burnout more broadly, think about One Direction in 2025.
Yeah.
The scale
Absolutely.
of that juggernaut of a band would have been even greater than it was at that point.
And also, I guess, the social media teams, they have a plan, don't they? Because even sometimes now when you do a TV show, because TV shows have also their own social platforms, and they're saying, look, can you make sure X and X posts about being on the show? And it's like, so we're relaying that to the teams or to the management teams, and they're like, whoa, we've got to announce this, and this first. And we can't, so they still want to make sure they don't overkill it, but they have to have a strategy and a structure. Otherwise, it just goes crazy.
Totally.
Because I think you can overdo it as well. I think you can overdo social media.
Well, social media or exposure more broadly.
Exposure,
I think we know. I think we all know, and we've seen it throughout the years. And we talk. I mean, a lot of the theme throughout this whole interview and chat really has been how cyclical the industry is, and how from Spandau, fan club, where you're DMing essentially, but via the medium of letters.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and as you said, it was exciting, it was great, but it was relentless. You're talking about thousands of letters.
Yeah.
And nowadays people are getting thousands of DMs. It's some of the same problems are kind of turning around in cycles, and TV is evolving, but is TikTok just not the new TV? I don't know.
Yeah.
But the one consistent here is the human part, which we're talking about, which is overexposure, burnout, and the effect that might have on the actual pop stars themselves. So anyway, with that in mind, slightly brighter question.
Yeah, but just going back to though the One Direction and towards the end, it was quite sad in a way, because they were quite sad because they knew they needed that break.
Right.
And I think it was quite a natural time for them to do it.
Right.
And it was really sad. And I remember the last TV we did was actually really sad. And the band were really sad. And even at X Factor when they did History, those tears were genuine.
I bet.
They were so upset. So it must be difficult, isn't it, when you're in that position? It's like, Louis, for example, he would have carried on, as I'm sure probably Liam would have carried on. But they've all gone off, and and sadly we did lose Liam, which was tragic, but they've all been successful in their own right.
And from those days of One Direction, what was one of the single best moments you remember when you worked with them? The bit that really stands out to you as
Brits, I think.
When they've done the Brits.
Yeah, Brits. Do you know what? With bands like that, everything's exciting just because you can't help getting caught up in their madness. You just can't help it. I think the Brits, and then when I did the red carpet for the premiere of the film.
Right, of course.
And just being there, and like the amount of people, that was like squeezed into Leicester Square. And that was kind of like, we were like, wow, So, yeah, because you just get caught up in it.
Of course.
And you just can't help it,
Just very, very quickly, what was it like being in the music industry as a female, particularly in the 90s and the 80s, I guess, 80s and 90s? How do you find that?
Yeah, I think when I first started, I think generally as a female, as a human being, I was quite naive anyway. So I didn't really kind of think about too much of that. I was so excited to be in an industry that I never knew anything about. Nothing. I didn't go, to college, uni to do media studies or anything. I had no idea. I kind of, as I said from earlier, I just fell into it. So at the beginning, I didn't really notice it. But as I got more and more into my craft, and I got more experience, and I was starting to look after major artists going into shows, I did sometimes feel with if my bosses were male and people producers at a TV show wanted to talk to somebody, I was like, well, I can help you out. No, I need to talk to Spanner, or I need to talk to X and X. And it's like, well, no, I can answer that question. So there was an element of that. I don't think we was taken as seriously. And I wouldn't say that went for everyone, to be fair. I never witnessed any wrongdoing. I mean, there was, there was a lot of cheekiness that would go on. But I just took it in my stride. Nothing ever offended me. I don't know what's wrong with me, but it never did. I just kind of laughed it off because that's how I dealt with it.
Yeah.
I remember, again, I can't name names, but it was a long time ago. I remember taking a Radio 1 winner to Philadelphia to see a band. And I remember one of the road crew was constantly ringing my room in the middle of the night. Can I come to your room? Do you want to come to my room? A lot of stuff like that would go on. And again, that wasn't my Syco, Westlife, One Direction days. That was a lot earlier. So there was an element of that.
Right.
And I
what
think
expectation around your role
like,
within?
I'm a female, so do you want to come to my room?
Right. Wow.
I mean, the road crew. As if. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, standards, boys.
Joking.
Standards.
No, I am joking. But no. So there was an element of that. I mean, when I kind of got into my position, when I came out of the independent companies, before I went freelance, and I was at Sony, BMG, Sony. The males there were really respectful. I mean, and I had a great position, and I worked with some really, really wonderful people. But I do think the business is very ageist. That's what I would say. So I think if you're a female of a certain age, I believe it's harder than if you're a male. And it was, in the early days, it was very much a boys' club.
Yeah. Like
the boys would be invited out to the lunches. They'd only ask the females if a Radio 1 producer wanted some, females there.
Wow.
So at the early stage, and I'm talking 80s, it was a little bit like that.
Yeah.
But I was, I never had a terrible time. I never had anything happen to the point where I had to talk to someone or it questioned my, why am I doing this industry? But I lived in such a bubble, Mark. I lived in such a TV bubble. And I remember just talking about TV and social media now. I remember somebody once saying to me a long time ago, when social media was starting to, the internet and stuff, saying, Jack, still do your TV, but you need to branch out. You need to start and I'm like, no, this is what I do. I love television. I'm in my own TV bubble. I'm not interested in anything else. And actually, in hindsight, I wished I'd listened to him because although I have an understanding and we all have social media, I think I would have been in a slightly different position.
But I don't think much has changed. And, I transitioned from TV and there was a period of time where actually I think the ageism thing was a little bit of a thing when I left Channel 4. I was in my late 30s and probably didn't fit the profile for a few of those key roles.
So I guess it goes for males as well, isn't it?
It does to some degree, for sure. But I think what I find really amazing about social media, which is a massive part of what I do now, is the same as TV. It's filming content to keep audiences watching. It's just contacts,
isn't it? It's contacts. It's like, I always used to say to a friend of mine, once you've got the contacts, you're fine. And you only get the contacts by calling people. And we've all had to do that over the years.
Yeah.
The first time I spoke to you, I had to, and then you kind of just build from there, don't you?
God, I wish I could remember that conversation because I would have been 20 and probably a bit like, I'm in TV, I don't know anything, but I just love it. I love everything. That's kind of like,
but I've always been in my own little TV bubble. That's all I've ever done, and that's all I've wanted to do. And it has changed. The labels are shrinking. Back in the day, there was so much more money. There was so much bigger budgets. We could take people abroad to see bands or to do interviews if Americans weren't coming in. Or we always did, as I'm sure we did with you guys, take people out to film videos that were maybe being shot with a UK artist. Yeah,
I'm not sure I paid for a lunch for about 15 years.
We all know me.
Which sounds like such a ridiculous thing to say out loud.
I was the same. We did. There was just more budgets for everything.
Yeah.
And now that's shrinking. And I think, labels now are kind of having to look at, as I'm sure when you spoke to Colin, that was part of what he was saying.
Well, Colin on one earlier podcast, I thought was a really fantastic conversation because, again, probably similar to yourself.
Yeah.
I think similar kind of journey, actually, in terms of, coming from a sort of relatively non-music background, but loving music, and then actually becoming one of the key A&Rs in the music industry. Even today, you've got some fantastic connects. But what I kind of think about your journey, and I know you're talking about the different changes, but you've had such an astonishing career.
Oh yeah, I can't complain.
I mean, such an astonishing career. And I think when I look back on our 25 years of knowing you, it's just been littered with just the biggest pop stars.
Yeah.
And that title, I was thinking about it before the interview and before the chat, I was like, she just is the queen of pop. Like I couldn't think of anything else. She's just the queen of pop. She's the queen of boy bands.
Do you know what? I've been so lucky, and I have worked with some amazing people, whatever music genre. I mean, for me personally, I love R&B. I love disco. I love jazz funk. I like reggae. That is like music that I really like.
Yeah.
I do love pop, obviously. I will listen to the Beatles as much as I would listen to Usher, for example.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And as when I look back, like when people ask for my CV, for example, or they ask who I've worked in the past.
Just send them this podcast.
Sometimes I have to think, oh my God, I remember looking after Johnny Depp for 3 days. Actually, if you ask me what my highlight is, that would be it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
and what kind of Johnny Depp era are we talking about here?
We are talking Kate Moss, long hair, always in trouble Johnny Depp era.
Okay, bad boy.
Bad boy Johnny Depp. And I remember I was working at Ferret Spanner at the time, and we looked after Shane MacGowan from the Pogues.
Quite different looking guy.
Very different. But you know what? The loveliest person you could ever meet.
Oh, for sure.
But anyway, and I remember my boss saying to me at the time, oh, Shane is releasing an album. And I was like, that's going to be tough for me in, mainstream. Yeah, but we've got a really good angle. Apparently there's this actor coming in with him. I've never heard of him. And I was like, and I was obsessed with Johnny Depp.
Right.
And I was like, well, who is it now? And he went, Johnny. I was like, Johnny Depp? Yep, that's the one. I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
And I wasn't really looking after Shane MacGowan at the time because the guys were doing it. And I was like, right, yep, I'll do it. I'll do the TV. I mean, we did the Ozone with Johnny Depp and with Shane MacGowan. I mean, the Ozone would never put Shane MacGowan on there, which was like the young interview show of the time that Andy Peters and stuff did. But we did that. We did a Top of the Pops. And I remember the director, getting a call from the floor manager, and the director called me up and he said, you need to ask Johnny Depp to put his hair behind his ears because we can't see his face because he's playing guitar like a rock and roller and his head's down, obviously.
Please don't tell me you put his hair behind his ears for him.
No. So, and I was like, well, I said, I don't think I can ask a Hollywood superstar to kind of put their hair behind that. And he was lovely, Johnny. He was very approachable. He came with no manager, no security. We just got him a car. So he was very, very respectful. So, but this director was like, I'm sorry, Jacqui, you need to ask the question. I was like, okay, I'll ask the question. And so I said to him, I said, oh, Johnny, I said, I'm really, really sorry. I said, but is there any way they want to get some camera shots of your face? So is there any way when you're playing, you can just put one side of your hair behind your ear so they can just at least see side profile? And he went, what, you mean like this? And he got my hair and he went like that to me with my hair. And I was like,
that's it, you were ruined.
I went, yeah, that's the one. And then he went to me, no. And I was like, okay, I've asked the question.
You just went and just had a
because he was
moment.
very much like, this is Shane MacGowan's moment. And you can't say to someone, well, actually, no, Shane MacGowan's got this show because of you.
Yeah.
You can't say that because it was Shane. He was the artist.
Well, hopefully Johnny Depp listens to this now.
Johnny, yeah, exactly. Johnny Depp.
He's definitely
was
getting
like
tagged.
the guest, So, yeah, so that was probably... And I was so popular that day. So many people calling him up. Are you with? Can't talk. Are you with him? Yeah, can't talk. I mean, it's amazing. Any kind of superstar musician, love, but not as excited as meeting Johnny Depp.
I felt a little bit the same way when I met Raleigh Ritchie, Grey Worm, in Game of Thrones. He released an album, and I've met so many people over the years. I've never taken a picture with anyone. No. But Raleigh Ritchie come into 4Music. I was like, "Can I get a picture with Grey Worm, please?" I was like, "What, you mean Raleigh?" I was like, "Sorry, yeah, Raleigh Ritchie, of course. Yeah, no, Grey Worm. So I want a picture." Yeah. Absolutely mental.
But you know what? Then though, we didn't have camera phones, so no pictures.
Yeah, well,
which is really sad. I got an autograph, but no pictures.
Well, it's a picture in here, isn't it? And I suppose Elon Musk at some point will pull something out of that so we can take pictures in our brain. I really hope so.
Hopefully. Which
is one of the best segues I've ever done to the future of music.
Yeah.
So, last question. Okay, and I ask every guest this, because I'm just interested in your take. The music industry, and you've seen the music industry change hugely over the years. And in fact, you even said earlier, the biggest thing that's changed really is technology. But if you think about the next 10 years, where do you think it's going? Where do you think the music industry is going?
That's a really, really interesting question, because I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it's an odd one, because I've had so many different answers from guests on the pod.
And mine's probably not the best. But
well, I don't know. It depends on your context, because we always think about it as, 10 years ago, what was the industry like in 2015?
I think 10 years ago, I'll still be listening to Simply Red. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in 10 years' time, I'll definitely still be listening to reggae. And I'll still be the queen of pop, but
I'll still be listening to One Direction.
Hey, they might have their comeback tour in 10 years' time.
Oh, maybe.
So what's the future of pop? One Direction come back and win it all again.
Coming back. Yeah. Although I don't think that will ever happen without Liam. Maybe.
Well, who knows what's going to happen in the future, because there's so much technology now. We saw ABBA,
but do you know what though? I've done that little bit of technology where there used to be a TV show where they did the holograms.
Yeah.
And I did Westlife and Roy Orbison, and it was just weird.
Yeah.
It's just weird. You can't recreate. It's like doing it with Elvis, isn't it? Or John Lennon or Prince or,
but it always feels weird, doesn't
George
it?
Michael.
Technology always feels weird initially.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a technophobe, Mark, so you're probably asking the wrong person when it comes to...
Well, I'd like to think at least humans will still be talking to humans. And
I'd like to think so, and people will still be making great music.
And I think that is what I hope will be happening in 10 years' time. Even though we've got lots of AI-generated music and lots of this kind of soul being pulled out of it, I kind of think 10 years' time, I'm hoping at least that we can still have conversations like this, reflect on how it was, talk about how it is right now and still speculate a little bit about where it's going. But I hope so. Look, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's just been such an amazing conversation covering all those bases from the Spandau Ballet fan club right the way through the 90s into the biggest pop band in the world, to Queen of Pop.
And we've only touched on it, haven't we, really?
And that's only chapter 1 of Jacqui Quaife's story. But no, honestly, it's been absolutely fantastic having you. It's been such a wonderful trip down memory lane as well. And just wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Make sure you subscribe and drop us a follow on Instagram to get involved with the conversation. For more information, go to blindingtalent.com or drop us an email at industry@blindingtalent.com. Thank you.